Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that you can learn from their success, become inspired, and meet the people that make change happen. I'm the host, Joe Reese, and today we are with my good friend Andy Dinkin with The Seals, which is the coolest company name I think I've had in quite some time. It is not the Navy SEALs, but it is The Seals. So for all of our listeners, tell us what The Seals is.
Yeah,
Seals are.
Great to be here and excited to talk to you and talk about my business. The SEALs, it's sort of a play on words. We do kitchen seals with a military-like proficiency and efficiency.
Okay.
So it's a play on words. We've been very well received in the marketplace with that brand name. But essentially, the SEALs we're talking about are gaskets on restaurant refrigeration equipment. So think of that rubber liner on your home refrigerator. Then think of that in a commercial setting. Take an Olive Garden, for example, that has 30 plus pieces of refrigeration equipment. Those are the busiest kitchens in our country, and those refrigeration drawers and half doors, they're being opened and closed all day. So even with the highest quality of gasket on that unit, over time, and that time could be a matter of weeks or months, the gaskets tear, the gaskets get mold on it, and health inspectors mandate that torn and moldy gaskets get replaced. And I've built an entire business around this very unique industry niche.
I was going to say, it's so unique and it's so interesting, but I mean, it makes sense, right? Because nobody wants to have mold on anything touching their food. So how did you get involved with this? Like that's the thing that I've been dying to ask you for weeks now since we got connected, but it's like, how did you find this niche? Like what happened? Like what sequence of a thing, you know?
Yeah, so I've been entrepreneurial my whole life, basically. At 26, I started my first business selling business telephone equipment and voicemail systems. I had a business in Charlotte.
So 2 years ago, right, when you were 26?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
2 years
Gotcha.
ago. 2 years
Gotcha.
ago. Yeah.
And what company was this for? We can date you a little bit.
Yeah.
Here.
So out of college, I spent 4 years working for a wonderful North Carolina-based company called Atcom Business Telephone Systems. I had an incredible mentor named David Finch, still a close friend and mentor today. But after 4 years of working with David and Atcom, my entrepreneurial juices started flowing, and my first business was in the telecom space. Owned a company called Tegra Telephone Systems for many years. Unfortunately, got out of that under duress. I had a business partnership that soured. Did a number of other entrepreneurial things, and ultimately in 2007, I went to work for the Levine family. I had a relationship with Daniel Levine, who's an incredible person. He was a friend and a mentor as well. Daniel had an interest in my salesmanship. And at the time, I had very young kids. I had 2 kids under 18 months, or my wife had 2 kids.
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, I took some entrepreneurial chips off the table. I went to work for Levine Properties. I learned a ton about commercial real estate. And I really enjoyed it and really thought that might be what I'd do forever. And then 2007, 2008, 2009, the economy here started to change. And so the vision Daniel and I had didn't look like it was going to happen in the time frame we were hoping, no fault of anybody's. And so at that point in my life, my kids started sleeping through the night. My entrepreneurial juices were flowing. And I started looking for businesses to buy. I had Daniel's blessing to go out in the marketplace, and I started networking aggressively with business brokers. And you hope, Reese, as you get older, you get wiser. So
That's the hope. That's the hope. I don't know if it's worked that way for me, but I think it has. So
at this point, I went into the marketplace and I had criteria for what I wanted in my next business. And that criteria, I had five criteria I wanted to meet. First and foremost, I wanted to meet demand for a product as opposed to creating demand for a product. And by that, I mean, there was a time I was a partner in a healthcare startup called In-Room MD. And my business partner and I set out to build a network of physicians to make hotel house calls for sick travelers. And people say, that's great. You mean if I'm traveling, I get sick, somebody will come to me? I'm like, that's right. This is a great offering. Don't you want to sign up for our service? Well, nobody had anything that was forcing them to make that decision today. So I had to, it was a longer sales cycle. I had to create demand and create need to then meet that demand. I realized this time around, I don't want to have to convince anybody to buy what I'm selling. I want the marketplace already to be buying that product. I just want to convince them to buy it from me.
So now, sorry, just to track up on this. So restaurants are required to do this for health inspection purposes, right? So if I'm, Reese's Restaurant of Awesomeness or whatever, RRA, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to do this regardless, right?
Well, that's right. And that's what
yeah.
really attracted me to it.
Okay.
I
Gotcha.
knew demand was there, and then I found myself looking at and vetting a business that was sort of quasi-government regulated. So to your point, health inspectors mandate that torn and moldy gaskets get replaced.
Mm-hmm.
So not in a million years when I went out looking for a business that I think I would find my way in an industry of replacing gaskets on commercial refrigeration equipment.
Right.
But that demand box, I put a huge check mark next to it. And so meeting demand was my first requirement. The other thing I was looking for was an industry that had a residual or a repeat clientele.
Okay.
I'm a relationship person. I wanted to find myself into an industry where once I earned your trust in business, I could keep doing business with you time and time again. My third criteria is I wanted something that had low fixed overhead. I really wanted to accentuate my salesmanship, my marketing skills, my sales management skills. I didn't want to get into an industry that required me to invest a lot in office space or industrial space, or required a bunch of vehicles or computer hardware. I wanted something that was low on the upfront capital and low on the fixed overhead. The other thing I wanted was ideally if I could find myself into an industry that had fragmented or poor competition. Mm-hmm. And my fifth criteria was I was looking for something that was recession resistant.
Okay.
So like I said, I went out in the marketplace, I vetted a ton of business. I found my way to a guy that was operating a small business west of Charlotte that replaced gaskets on commercial refrigeration equipment.
Yeah.
I spent a day in the field with him and I started checking boxes.
Yeah.
Quickly realized that there was demand. That health inspectors drove this demand, that this was something that if you showed up every few months or certainly every quarter, you were going to get repeat orders. Mm-hmm. I quickly learned that most commercial kitchen operators, be it restaurants or hotels, colleges, school systems, country clubs, really anybody with refrigeration, they had to change gaskets, and they were typically using their commercial refrigeration vendors for this service need. Mm-hmm. And after doing some due diligence and calling operators in that space, I realized that those vendors really didn't want to deal with gaskets.
I was going to say, they probably don't even want to do it.
They don't want to do gaskets, door sweeps, strip curtains.
Yeah.
And so when we call on an account that's using their commercial refrigeration vendor, we talk about complementing that vendor. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about replacing them. We talk about those guys are great at what they do. We're really gifted and talented at what we do, and we complement the refrigeration vendor. Yeah. But it allowed me to check that big box of what I'm calling poor or fragmented competition.
Yeah.
And then the final criteria I had is I wanted something that would hold up in a tough economy. Mm-hmm. And when I found my way to this little industry niche,
yeah.
people will eat. Health inspectors aren't going away. Mm-hmm. So I bought a business where there was demand for the product, that it was residual sale, that had low fixed overhead, that had poor and fragmented competition, and was recession resistant. Mm-hmm. And so I bought a little company in 2010, and I've been building that business ever since.
That's amazing. So you have all 5 of these criteria, and just you may not even remember, or maybe it was maybe the seals was the first thing that you had. Did you look at any other businesses, any other types that didn't check all 5? Like, can you remember any of those?
Well, I had been in other businesses that didn't check them all. So in addition to In-Room MD, where I was sort of having to create demand in sort of a pioneering industry, I also spent time as a partner with Charlotte-based sales trainer Jeffrey Gittimer. Okay. Jeffrey's been a great friend and mentor. Jeffrey's the author of the Sales Bible and the Little Red Book of Selling.
Yeah.
And so just as web-based training was becoming a thing, Jeffrey and I launched a company called Train One.
Okay.
Now, again, anybody that has a sales team recognizes the value of having great sales meetings and educating their sales team. And so we provided weekly video on-demand sales training, which
that's cool.
Was great.
Yeah.
And we would tell you people need, but very few people woke up today saying, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to sign a contract and buy sales training.
Create that demand, yeah.
It was a long sales cycle. So it was my past experiences that made it clear to me I wanted a shorter sales cycle. I wanted to meet demand. And so I looked at tons of businesses. I looked at various franchise opportunities. I mean, I aggressively networked with business brokers. I looked at restaurant concepts. I looked at many, many things. And lo and behold, this
Yeah.
little niche business is one that just resonated and checked all my boxes.
Yeah, that's it was so intelligent of you to kind of create those 5 criteria, because we were talking before the show about the business things that I've done and opportunities I've had and things like that. And a huge reason that we started the painting company is because the demand is there. You know,
right.
like we're not. I mean, we're trying to catch up. We're trying to put the reins in the bull and ride away instead of trying to create the demand, so to speak.
That's right.
So,
That's right. People are getting their houses and rooms painted. You just have to be the attractive provider.
Always.
That's
always.
right.
You know, so that's extraordinary. So the seals you've had since 2010, so 14 years if my math's right. Okay.
Yep.
So what types of challenges and things like that have you faced?
Well, people. I mean,
sure.
all business problems are people problems.
Yeah, of course.
We have great product. We have great process. The elixir that stirs it all together is the people.
Sure.
And so that's really where our focus is. I tell our leadership team that we're not in the gasket business, we're in the people business. And so as a leader, my job is to set culture. My job is to really be heavily involved in recruiting and bringing the right people onto our team.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the next level of that question. You know, what types of things do you do? Or let's say, let's take your interview process for instance. You know, what types of things have you implemented to make sure you're getting the right talent in the positions?
Yeah. So I'm really into the behavioral science side of hiring.
Sure.
I
am too, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to invest a lot of time, money, and energy into people I bring on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to people from the beginning, I'm not interviewing you any more than you're interviewing me. We have to have cultural alignment and fit.
Definitely.
Or it's not good for anybody. So it really, looking at a behavioral assessment and knowing sort of what I'm looking for in the right person, then I write job placement ads that are designed with language to attract what I want. So it starts with writing really good job placement ads. I think if somebody looked at mine are written a little bit differently. They're designed to attract a certain person. I've been very intentional on the word choices I make. So running good job placement.
Do you have any example
ads.
of that? Like maybe something that you implemented into the ad itself or the copy or anything?
Yeah, well, one thing that I put in at the final part of any job placement ad is if you're grumpy or have a bad attitude, don't waste my time by applying.
Yeah, okay.
And that's straightforward, but if you're reading that and people know if they're grumpy or bad attitude people.
Yeah.
So I hope something like that will just weed them out.
Yeah.
But I'm writing language if you're a self-starter, if you want to build your own enterprise within our organization and have autonomy and growth. So I'm writing it with word choices that are hopefully going to resonate with the sort of candidate I'm looking for.
For sure.
I also now have sort of changed the way I approached my pipeline of potential employees. There was a time in the past where I would really sort of make people jump through hoops to get to me.
Okay.
Meaning, if they replied to a job posting, I would then ask them what makes them think they're a good candidate. I might encourage them to watch a video. I might want to put them through some testing.
Sure.
Now, I'm going to, if somebody replies to a job posting, I'm going to put them through less front-end vetting, and I'm going to want to get them on a video call with me to let me present my company in a compelling way.
Okay.
I just want to cast a wider net. And I realize that by not putting some barriers on the front end, I may end up with some candidates that I'm spending time with that don't cut the mustard.
Sure.
But I'm willing to invest my time to look at a broader pool of candidates. So if people show interest, I then get them on a quick Zoom call to go through a compelling presentation of my company. And I didn't really live in that Zoom world pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, has been a valuable change for me, where I'm able to connect with people all over the state or all over the country for that matter, because I'm also embedding potential franchisees. But really using Zoom and really having a good, compelling presentation that introduces my company in a compelling way, I want to get people leaning forward with interest. Once I have them interested in me, then I'm going to put them through a very thorough vetting process. That vetting process will include a behavioral assessment. It will include calling references. Is that like a
personality test type of thing, or?
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answers, but
Okay.
yeah, I would call it a personality test.
Okay.
And I use a version of DISC.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
And this one has a parameter that shows their economic goals, if you will.
Yeah,
So I can see
ambitions almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see if somebody is economically driven, and I can also see sort of what they're looking for from a work-life balance.
Okay.
And the truth is, if you're going to be in commission sales and build a marketplace, I'm looking for people that want to get a little bit out of balance.
Yeah.
I'm looking for people that want to make a lot of money.
Very economically driven, yeah.
That are economically driven, that are willing to go that extra mile.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't tell me about their ethics and values and morals, which is most important to me. But if somebody isn't wired to go out there and overcome objections and do face-to-face marketing, they're just not going to be a good fit for my business.
Yeah,
and I can pick those traits up pretty quickly on a behavioral assessment.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I have an interesting question about this subject, and I'm going to try to lead this question as objectively as humanly possible. Now, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just your opinion completely. But do you feel like personality assessments and compatibility assessments, things like this, do you feel like they fall subject to confirmation bias? As in, like, I'm not the most, I don't know, empathetic individual in existence, but I would like to be. Having empathy is good.
Sure.
So if they said, "Are you empathetic?" Strongly agree, because I want to be like that. You know, that doesn't mean that I am. But do you feel like there's a lot of accuracy with personality testing in that way, or do you feel like a lot of it can kind of surprise you? And what's your experience with that? So,
well, it's a great question. If do people try and game it?
I didn't do that. Yeah, I didn't do that objectively at all. By the way,
Yeah.
that was totally my subjection on it. But anyways,
well, it's not my only criteria. But,
Sure.
but the direct answer is my experience has been that these do give you a pretty good window into how somebody is naturally wired.
Yeah.
And I'd rather play to somebody's natural strengths.
Right.
I think in anything in life, if you can figure out what it is that you love to do and you're good at, you're better off following that than trying to morph into something that isn't naturally who you are.
Yeah.
But to your point, you can't measure what's in somebody's head and what's in their heart.
No.
And certainly somebody that has great desire can overcome all sorts of things.
Sure.
But all things being equal, I'd rather hire somebody that's a better natural fit, because I think acting different than how you naturally are can kind of be exhausting.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and some people are more, some people like the thrill and the hunt of cold calling. Other people are more interested in taking care of an existing customer. And other people would rather not deal with the public at all and might just want to work more
or whatever,
in their computer or more in a technician role.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for alignment. You
Yeah.
know, business strategy is important, but culture kicks strategy's butt all day, every day.
For sure.
And so my goal
agree.
is to bring in people that are a good cultural fit.
Yeah. We're talking about hiring a little bit. Do you feel like it's an employer's market or an employee's market?
Well, I feel like it's changed quick. I do
too.
feel just anecdotally from some of the response I've gotten to my job postings that it's shifting, that employers are now able to find talent, that there seems to be less jobs, that certainly things are different now than they were through the pandemic and even post-pandemic. So yeah, I think as we sit here today in the end of June of 2024, I feel like it's tipping back towards the employers.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and it's interesting. I always make a joke that marketers ruin everything, so you're welcome. But I think that, for example, whenever we post a new job posting, I mean, we'll have over a weekend 100 new applications to sift through, and it's a challenging piece for entrepreneurs to hire and maintain good talent, because back to the original job references and things like this, like, I've never read a bad resume. You know what I mean? I've never read one that didn't make a person look like they were the most amazing person ever, type of thing. I do have a question for you. One of the things that you mentioned about taking the extra steps, the process, personality assessments, and they can access you now. They don't have to jump through hoops. How do you feel? One of the things you said was that you actually are calling on their references and things like that.
That's right.
Walk me through that. What makes you do that?
Well, there was a time in my life where I thought, well, who's going to give me a bad reference?
Right.
Like, why waste my time calling a reference? Because, of course, if you give it to me, they're going to say great things about me.
Right.
But I read a book called Who that really focuses on the art of making good hires. And you'd be surprised what a reference will tell you. They may not say something negative about that person, but if you dig a little deeper, ask more what their real experiences were, you'd be surprised what people ultimately can reveal.
Yeah.
And I just think you're foolish as a HR person to not call references.
Yeah.
I just think you just never know what can come out of it.
For sure.
Failure to do so has always, not always, in some cases has proven to be a mistake.
For sure, and it's once again, there's no right or wrong answer here, I don't think. But I've had it both ways myself. You know, I've had it both ways where I've called a reference and, oh yeah, this person's the best person ever and whatever, and you know, they turn out not to be. And then I've had it to where, you know, somebody said something, I was like, that's a little alarming, you know. And then come to find out, you know, there was some dispute about these things. But you know, another thing that I think is that, let's say you call these references or whatever, right? I think that it's important, especially if you're seriously looking at a candidate, right? And somebody says something like, hey, you know, I called Mary or whoever, you know, these are all fake names, but I called Mary and she said that there was one time that you got into it with Bob at the office or whatever, you know, can you explain that? And then I like to hear other people's points of view, because one thing that I've learned in my tenure and career and things like this is that there's never really one side to a story, and you know, you kind of have to pick and choose what side you believe or what, or just kind of make your own assessment about the situation at hand type of thing. But I don't know, references are kind of bizarre like that, because I feel like you're absolutely right. I think that you'd be surprised about what you find, but at the same time, I just worry that the past is the past, you know. And if I'm connecting with somebody and I feel like, you know, we're focused on the future type of thing, like everybody has a past, you know. There's all of us have made mistakes. All of us have had a moment that did not illuminate us in the best way. You know what I mean? So it's tough. It's tough to make these choices, but that's the call of entrepreneurship. You know.
Well, but the best indicator of the future performance is the past. So
True.
if I call a reference, I may say something like, "Can you tell me the most important accomplishment that Greg made when he used to work for you?"
Yeah. And they're like, he didn't really do anything. It's
if they can't come up with anything, or you know, what was missed most when Jack left your company. So there's ways you can ask those questions to see if you can derive anything of value.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I think all employers should hire slow, fire fast. I can tell you, I've never regretted making a fire.
Really?
I only regretted not doing it sooner.
Yeah.
There's never been a
You're
time
not the only person that's told me that.
There's never been a time where I fired somebody. I really blew it. So and so was great. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
No. Every single time I thought, you know, I knew their first day on the job or their first week on the job, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I should have cut them sooner.
Yeah.
Because it was in everybody's best interest. If it's not working
sure.
for me, it's not working for them.
Yep. And sometimes it's not even about them. Sometimes it's about just their connection with the company, or how they communicate with others, or you know, just how they fit into this puzzle of this position of this company that you've made for them, you know. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because my business partner and I were just having this conversation very recently, and you know, he's always gotten that advice from his mentors, his business mentors. Fire fast, hire slow, fire fast. Find the right person, fire fast if you have to do it, type of thing. And of course, over the years, we've been in business for 8 years. We've had to make these decisions, you know.
Sure.
And what you said just completely reigns true. Is that those decisions that we've made, we've gotten faster at it, but we're not. Nobody wants to fire somebody for the most part, you know, unless there's just something completely egregious. They stole money or something like that, like you're out. But you know, if it's just not a fit, it's always a tough conversation. It's not fun, you know. But it's just an important piece of the puzzle, and I think that, you know, especially for our listeners, you know, people that are interested in entrepreneurship, you know, they need to give themselves an honest look in the mirror and wonder if they're cut out for that, because that's not for everybody, you know.
That's right.
Now, with that said, there are a lot of great HR companies that you can work with that will do that process. You know, you just got to pay them some money, and then they'll offer the severances and you know, things like that. But it's one of those eerie things that I don't think entrepreneurs talk about enough, because it's something that, look, if you've been in business for 10 years, I promise you fired somebody. I promise you fired somebody. Probably more than once, probably more than 10 times, you know?
That's right.
It's just a fact. And I feel like entrepreneurs don't often talk about that, because it's almost like a black mark on their record. Like, oh, you know, it's not a nice thing, but it's not important to have nice it's not important to have nice experiences as much as it is important to grow from bad ones, I think, sometimes. You
Agreed.
know? So it's
Look,
just
the goal of a
tough.
business is to make a profit. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be benevolent. I certainly
Definitely.
I want to take good care of my people, good care of my customers. I deal people with the highest level of ethics. We preach it's never the right time to do the wrong thing, never the wrong time to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the purpose of a business is to make a profit.
Right.
I just recognize that the best way to profitability is to lift up great people. That the growth and success of my business is based on the growth and the success of the people in it.
Absolutely
But when
true.
you don't fire the poor performers, the good performers recognize that, and they don't want to be on a team with people that aren't at their level. So culture is just an incredibly important thing, and it can be very delicate within a business.
It is. And I mean, and sometimes you run into these tertiary issues you wouldn't even have anticipated because you have to let somebody go and then they're friends with somebody else and then it's, it's chaos. But,
That's right.
It's just these things you have to learn. Let me ask you this. So some people believe in the 80-20 rule. They believe that, and it goes both ways, right? They think that 20% of your workforce, sales force makes 50% of the profit, and then 80% makes the remainder type of thing. The other way to look at this is that 20% of your sales force typically underperforms, and the remaining 80% kind of does the job. And then, of course, you have the standouts and things like this.
Sure.
So I don't mind saying his name, he said it on air, but Jason Waller was his name, and he was a big proponent of 80-20. And so what he said was that I have an aggressive sales team, and I want to hire the best of the best. So every quarter, we take a look at everybody's performance. It's just performance. It's just numbers on a sheet that have nothing to do with the personality. So the bottom 20%, we put them on an improvement plan, and if they don't improve, we let them go. And so I was like, man, on one hand, that's kind of savage, but on the other hand, it's like he grew $1 billion business. So, it's like, what's the right move here? It's kind of a tough thing to think about.
Well, one of my favorite business books was written by Jack Welch, a former CEO of GE, and it's called Jack Straight from the Gut, and that's what he'll tell you. Every year he would cut his bottom 10%, and it was just culturally part of what they did, and so I think it's a good way to look at your business. Poor performers pull down the rest of the group, and they set a level of expectation that can bring you down.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too because we always talk about growth mindsets, and in many ways it is certainly possible to nurture a force and for people to grow together, but also in many ways if you don't have a little bit of I'll call it refreshment or recycling of people within an organization, there's nothing new that comes to the table, so you won't have any new ideas. It's the same people operating the same way,
That's right.
Now, in the best case scenario, let's say in 2024 our sales team is 10, next year it's 12, and the following year it's 14, and next year it's 16, so we don't have to worry about cutting people, so to speak. But, if there's spots to fill, competition is a very real motivator and a driver.
Agreed, without a doubt. Yeah, that scoreboard's important, and if it's a sales organization like mine is, then that becomes very important. Good salespeople are competitive, and then they want to be viewed as the best at what they're doing.
I think it's a requirement. I think being competitive is a requirement to be a good salesperson. Period.
I think so.
I
think so. And these are some of the traits that I'm going to see in a behavioral assessment.
True. Yeah. I actually, it's funny you should mention that. I was just talking. I was talking about somebody before the show. It's going to be way too obvious if I say his name because I'm about to tell you a story. I'll tell you after the show, by the way. But anyway, so he is hiring a salesperson, and they went through an interview process. And when they went through this interview process, they had one person that they hired, and the person's like, listen, and this is what the guy said to him. And I was like, I don't think I've ever respected somebody from a story more in my life. But he said, listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm always going to tell you the truth. I'm not the easiest person to deal with in the world. I'm very competitive. I get up early. I go to bed late. I work very, very, very hard. You're going to have to deal with me. I'm going to treat the customer better. I'm going to treat you, my boss, and that's just the way that it is. You're going to make more money with me than you ever made before because I'm the best at this. And I was like, that's a guy. I mean, that's a salesperson. You know what I'm saying? Inversely, they hired somebody else, or they didn't hire somebody else. They interviewed somebody else. The second person said, well, my goals for the next 5 years is one of the questions they asked. My goals for the next 5 years, I would really like to be stable and work 9 to 5 and be able to go home to my family, and I just want to be comfortable and things like this. And then, without any other information, for a sales position, guess who they hired?
They hired the aggressive guy.
They hired the aggressive person, and they said, "Listen, we'll deal with you, but do your job." And that's the way you have to look at things with business.
Sure.
We're almost out of time here because it took me eternity to set up my camera, which is a whole other story. But before we get out of here, I do want to talk about something that's very, very near and dear to your heart. It's very it's a very a touchy subject. But last October we had things happen with the Jewish community, and before the show you're talking about your the things you've done with the Jewish community. I'll just put it that way. And so first off, I applaud you for that, and I think it's very important that people know what's going on. The second thing is, what can we do? Like, and what I mean by this is for example, we were talking about you brought some people in to I think a football team to speak.
I brought a speaker to talk to the UNC Charlotte football team on the topic of anti-Semitism.
Right.
And I did that in response to some of the rampant anti-Semitism on college campuses.
Yeah, and media attacks.
I'm a former student athlete. I know the prominence that student athletes hold on college campuses.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to meet with Biff Poggi, the head football coach at UNC Charlotte, who's an incredible man, a courageous man, somebody with tremendous moral clarity. And when I met him, I asked him if he'd be willing to let me bring a speaker in on that topic, and he did. And it really resonated well with the team.
Yeah.
And I think guys got a perspective on things that they haven't had before. And now I'm getting involved in an organization called Athletes for Israel with the idea of using the prominence of athletes to tell the truth about Israel, tell the beautiful story of that country. And without seeing it and being there, it's hard to really understand it. But the goal is to be bringing people of prominence in the sports world to Israel and help them tell that story.
Yeah. I always shudder because with our news, I think our news is evil. I just flat out do. And I don't care which way you lean politically, but I just feel like there's I'm in marketing, and so I believe that people will follow a good story before they follow the truth, if that makes sense. And so I've witnessed with my own two eyes. I think we saw it with many things that happened in 2020, and I'll just leave it at that. But I've seen with my own two eyes the way that the media can spin a story and kind of spin a person's belief in a certain way, or shift it in a direction by telling a story a certain way. So, my question for you is what's next? How do we get involved, and how do we put an end to that stuff? Because I think it's so important that people know what's going on. And I mean, I've experienced. I dated a Jewish girl, to tell you the truth. So I'm very, very familiar with all the anti-Semitism and things like that. And honestly, I'm not a Jewish person, and I don't even think I'd be aware of it had I not had this experience. So So what's the next step for us? I mean, what do we do in order to just make people love each other again, man? It seems easy, but it's not.
That's a big question. I don't know that I have a universal answer for that. I can tell you that there aren't that many Jews on the planet. I think when people hear all this about Israel and Jews, and then I ask people, do you know how many Jewish people there are in the whole world?
Yeah. Wait, let me guess. Hang on. I want to guess before.
Well, first let's start. How many people are there in the world? Let's start with that.
7 billion, right?
7 to 8 billion.
Okay, 8 billion. Okay.
So 97% of the resolutions in the UN have to do with Israel.
Okay.
You turn on the TV or any news source, it's Israel, Jews. So
right.
How many Jews out of 8 billion people?
My guess would be 30 million.
Half of that.
15 million.
And 30 million would be a small number. 15 million out of 8 billion is infinitesimally tiny.
It's not even a percent.
And so, the Jewish people hold a unique place in the world, and that continues to evolve.
Yeah.
I don't know what the future is exactly. I know the Jewish people wax and wane like the moon.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're stronger, sometimes we're weaker, but we continue. And as painful as what happened on October 7th is, the Jewish people continue to get stronger, and in a strange way, Israel is getting stronger as a result. So I don't have any global answers.
Yeah.
But God willing, the future will be better for everybody.
Yeah, I don't think that there are any global answers, unfortunately. But it's just a matter of. I mean, I think that there's a rhetoric that our governments typically propagate, and a lot of times. This is the cynic in me, I think, but I think that a lot of times government entities profit off of war and conflict, and I think the vast majority of civilians, the vast majority of people, no matter who they are, just want peace. They just don't. They don't want to fight each other. They don't want. They don't want to. I mean, how horrible must it be to be there and feel literally nervous for your home's sake because there's bombs going off every day.
On both sides. And
Yeah.
I just want to, I certainly don't speak for all Jewish people, but
Right.
in my circles of Jewish friends, everybody has great compassion for people on both sides.
For sure.
The narrative that Jews or Israel are bloodthirsty people is probably what hurts the most.
For sure.
I truly believe that Jews and Israelis want to live in peace.
Yeah.
And I hope there's peace in the future. And I don't hold ill will in my head or my heart for anybody.
Yeah.
I just want to live in peace.
Yeah.
And I think that's the narrative that most Jewish people and most Israelis would tell you. We'd go to great lengths to have peace. Please bring us a partner that wants peace.
Yeah. I don't know. You said you live in south of Providence, correct?
Yeah, I live in the Arboretum area.
That's right. I'm sorry you told me that before the show, but I live uptown, and I've seen a lot of these protests and marches and things like that, and it's like I have an interesting viewpoint on protests and marches. I think because on one hand I'm like, is this doing anything productive? I guess But on the other hand, just like we're talking about earlier in the show, I don't think any one viewpoint is 100% correct ever type of thing. But when you super expose one side or something like that, it pushes a rhetoric in a certain direction, And so I think that it would be more productive if the leadership, as it were to meet and kind of hash things out, because then we'd have some facts to go by instead of two populaces that ultimately I think just want peace. They just don't want to be worried about living type of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to bring that up. I know that's a touchy subject, but I wanted to bring it up because it's something you're passionate about, and I think that the more angles and the more times we mention these things is for the better for the most part. So
yeah. Well, thank you for your interest. It's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
Comfortable to talk about.
Yeah, and that makes it a lot easier. Okay, we'll shift back to business real fast before we sign off here, but I did want to bring that one up. Okay, so in business, this is the point of the show where we're winding down, and I try to ask something fun or funny, and so I'm stalling because I wanted to talk about that, and so now I'm stalling and trying to figure something fun out. Okay, well before we get there, let's talk about the future of seals and gaskets and things like this.
Yeah.
So obviously industries are always ever evolving and changing and things like this. So I presume that as you're replacing seals and gaskets, things like this, now they're made out of fallible materials. They just are. There's no way to make them otherwise.
That's right.
So eventually they're going to break, and you're going to have repeat customership and things like this.
That's right.
However, my presumption would be that with technology, you're going to have more durable materials and things like this. Is that kind of the way it goes, or it just depends?
I don't think that's the direction it's going. I
Okay.
mean, the stuff we have is pretty darn durable. We work with a wide variety of rubber extruders.
Yeah.
So I don't know that industry will change so much.
Okay.
I often wonder sometimes if eventually somebody will make a piece of refrigeration equipment without a gasket.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't really keep me awake at night. The future for me is as a franchisor.
Okay.
Like I said before, I've got great product, I've got great process, and I've got a lot of great people.
Yeah.
But you can appreciate, Reese, the difference between me hiring somebody as a W-2 employee versus somebody writing me a check to get involved with my company to be a franchisee.
Yeah.
That person is going to have a much different level of motivation. And that's really what I'm looking for is outside of North Carolina, my growth trajectory is as a franchisor. I have 4 franchisees right now. They're doing great. We give them a really robust training experience, both in person, and we've created a really terrific learning management system with hours and hours of training videos. So we train folks well. We have our own in-house manufacturing, so we have the best, most concierge level supply chain that this little industry niche has ever seen.
Yeah.
And then we give great field tech support. My franchisees are one phone call away from really experienced people that can walk them through anything that they're going to see out in the marketplace. So I love my employees. I have a great team of employees. However, it's more exciting to be spawning fellow entrepreneurs where I can take somebody that has always wanted to own and grow a business and all the attributes that attracted me to my business, the demand for the product, the residual, the low fixed overhead, helping set somebody up so they can have their own success, build their own asset on their own balance sheet that increases in value, and create win-win relationships. So
Yeah.
for me, the future is growth through franchising, and so far so good, and excited about what that would hold in the future.
Heck yeah. And one of the recurring themes I've learned with you is that for you the sales cycle is all about building and maintaining relationships.
That's right.
And it's so important. I think so many people miss that. And we were even talking before the show. It's like things aren't always going to go well. They're
That's
just
right.
not. Eventually, you're going to get into an argument with somebody. It's just life. It's just life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's so important to maybe approach with humility, courtesy, integrity, all of the above. Make things right, and then you may lose a customer contract if things don't go well. But at the end of the day, the hope is that you're doing right and you're sleeping okay at night, and you can go your different ways, and
That's right.
everything's fine from there.
Yeah, restaurant people are very hard to get on the phone. They're
Sure.
very hard to get
Sure.
via email. If you run a restaurant, you care about, most importantly, customers coming through your
in.
front door,
Yep.
vendors through the back. Most of your dealings are in person with people. And
Yep.
so I'd love to think I could grow my business with direct mail, with email campaigns, and I do some of that.
Yeah.
But it is the guy showing up at that restaurant to
That's
do
the way
the
to do
job.
it.
And
For
so,
you, that's the way to do it.
That's right. And so I need great people. I have a lot of great people. I intend to add more great people that are my employees, but more so, I'm just very excited about spawning other entrepreneurs, people that are going to invest in a business, and as a result, they're going to practice the techniques I teach them, I think, with a different level of commitment than an employee would.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Real fast. I don't know why talking about gaskets reminds me of this. I told you I was in the car industry for a couple years. If you ever get a chance, drive a Rolls-Royce Phantom.
Okay.
But pay attention to the door. And it's something that sticks out with me in the car industry. I'm a car person. I talk about cars forever, by the way. But so if you open the door of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, the door is like 500 pounds. I mean, it's like a bank vault. Okay. But it's very light because of the hinges.
Yeah.
But if you actually feel it, I mean, it's like a door. You know? And when you close it, it's like closing a bank vault. It's like, I mean, it's like a full thing. So maybe the evolution of the seals is you go from refrigeration to like automotive or automotive doors or something like that, because there's some I don't know what kind of gaskets that thing is using, but it is a vault. You know what I mean? Anyway, it is what it is. Okay, one final question. I got something. It's okay. It's not my best funny question ever, but okay. 2010, you start the business. It's 2024 now. So it's kind of a corny question, but is there anything that you wish you would have known in 2010 that you know now about your industry?
I wish I knew a pandemic was coming.
Yeah, no kidding.
That really rocked my world.
I bet.
As you remember, the restaurants all shut down.
Yeah.
My people went scrambling.
Yeah.
And so I would tell you, I'm really about 4 years behind where I thought I would be.
Wow.
I was manufacturing in the Raleigh area pre-pandemic. I bought a little business there that I grew. When the pandemic hit, I shut it down.
Wow.
I started buying product from a third-party supplier. I
Gotcha.
just now, in the last year, set up my own manufacturing again. This time we're doing it in Charlotte.
Okay.
But that was a lot of time, money, and effort.
For sure.
I had to build a manufacturing business, shut
it down and get back.
and start it over.
Wow.
Pre-pandemic, I had a huge pipeline of prospective franchisees. That all went vapor.
Oh,
so,
sure.
No, my instincts to get into this business were right. My criteria was right. This business has turned out to be the correct match. The pandemic wasn't something I could see.
There's so many businesses that are affected that way too.
Look, and some businesses did great through it. I have some friends that have flourished.
Yeah.
And thank God I'll be back to where I hope to be. But I'd be lying to say it was tough. I mean, when those first weeks and months, I mean, I sat in my home office with my face in my hands, and it was dark. What's going to happen? So other than that, I'm glad I set criteria. I picked a good business. The pandemic set me back, but I'm a tough guy, and I'm going to persevere, and I have persevered. And,
For sure.
And I've become better as a result. Post-pandemic, I hired my own coach. I got involved in a executive coaching platform called Vistage.
Yeah.
My Vistage coach and my personal and business coach is Matt Doherty, former Tar Heel basketball coach. I'm getting wisdom from a guy that played for Dean Smith at North Carolina. So a lot of my personal and professional changes has been looking at culture differently. So that wasn't an exact answer to your
No,
question.
I think it was.
But the pandemic I didn't see coming, and it hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's changed me for the best, and I'm a better version of myself as a result. One thing that Matt really helped me with, and one of the anchors for me culturally is this booklet I created called The SEAL's Way.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm very much active in recruiting employees and franchisees, to have had something that culturally talks about our values and habits for success. We talk about, our goal is to be extraordinary through extraordinary people.
That's awesome.
And I really honed in on our core values. And our core values are hungry, helpful, habitual.
Mm-hmm.
I want people that are hungry, that have a natural
Triple H.
fire in
Triple
their
H.
belly.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, look, I'm not going to be standing over your bedside kicking your tail to get out of bed in the morning. You're going to be autonomous. You need to have a fire in your belly. You need to be hungry, maybe have something more important in your life than just yourself.
Yeah.
So I want people that are naturally hungry.
Well said.
That oftentimes is where the behavioral assessments help me.
For sure.
I want people that are naturally helpful. I talked about if you're grumpy or have a bad attitude, don't come work here.
Yeah.
And I'll tell people, look, if you don't smile easy, if you're not a good-natured person, you may be a wonderful person, but you're probably not a good cultural
fit. Yeah.
And then my business is sort of more like route management. We see the same accounts every 90 days. We do proactive inspection. So there's a whole bunch of good habits that you have to sort of keep the proverbial wheel turning. So it's hungry, helpful, habitual. I then identify what I call my 31 core habits. Each week we have a core habit of the week. We emphasize it on our team call. Every weekday my team at 8 a.m. gets a text message emphasizing the core habit of the week. So just trying to do things culturally.
Yeah, I love it.
And vision and mission can be important, but it can be a little, it may not resonate day to day. And that's why I really emphasize the habits I want.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you can call it whatever you want to, but I think that everything you just mentioned, mission statements, values, habits, whatever you want to call them, they all fall under the blanket of culture, and different companies do culture differently, and it's just the way that it is.
That's right.
Our culture, I mean, my head web developer texted me something funny at 8 o'clock this morning. It was just something funny, you know what I mean? It was just something, whatever, like, hey, let's get ready for work, or whatever,
Yeah.
And that's just a part of our culture. Okay, I got a good question. This is my last question. Then we're gonna have some lunch. I'm getting hungry. So, all right, you're Tar Heel, and I'm a Tar Heel fan. Okay, so you are superior to me in always the correct color blue. And I did say that the way I meant it. But okay, Dean Smith or Roy Williams?
I'll have to go with Dean.
Gotta go with Dean. You gotta go with Dean.
When I was 17 and went on my recruiting trip to North Carolina, they had just built the Dean Dome.
Wow.
They brought us into a practice. I got to meet Dean Smith.
Wow.
And I was thinking, man, if they want me, they got me.
Yeah.
So I love Roy and I love Hubert. I graduated with Hubert Davis, but if you ask me to pick, I'm gonna pick Dean Smith.
Gotta pick Dean. Dean did more for the if you look into it, and this is for all our listeners, 'cause I know but Dean did more for the African American community than any coach ever has ever. So anyway,
he has. And then I was lucky enough to play for Hall of Famer Mac Brown.
That's
when
awesome.
I look back
That's
on
awesome.
my life, Reese, I mean, I am incredibly blessed. I played for an
No other way to
incredible
put it.
basketball and football coach in high school. I mean, I could have gone anywhere. Mac Brown walked into my life. He was in his 30s. We went 1-10 our first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
But I got to play for Mac Brown.
Yeah.
And now Mac is back as the coach.
Yeah.
And it's just been very exciting. Those of us that played
awesome.
with him the first time, I mean, we're getting a second bite of the apple with our coach. And it's been incredible.
Go Heels, baby.
Yeah.
Go Heels.
That's right.
Good day to be a Tar Heel, right? That's right.
Always a great day to be a Tar Heel.
That's right. All right, my man. Let's have lunch. We'll talk soon. Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it. Great being with you.
Absolutely.